Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this video I want to take a look at IMF debt traps and how IMF is been using coronavirus as a sort of shock doctrine to create debt traps in Africa. In this video firstly I want to take a look at what are the African countries that have been receiving loans. Secondly I want to take a look at what is a shock doctrine, and thirdly I want to look into how IMF actually works and why these loans will be bad for Africa in the long run. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe, like, share and comment because it helps me out. Thank you.
The International Monetary Fund has agreed to loan South Africa 70 billion rand. The 4.3 billion US dollar loan will be used to help the country mitigate the social and economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Despite Ugandans getting more dates trend, this new $491 million line of credit was justified, according to Adam Mugume, the Executive Director, Research Bank of Uganda.
In a bid to stabilize economic recovery, the International Monetary Fund has approved Kenya a 38-month program to scale up COVID response, reduce debt vulnerabilities, and restructure state-owned enterprises.
We have also applied to the International Monetary Fund for its COVID-19 rapid credit facility to draw from our existing holding within the World Bank IMF group. This loan will not be tied to any conditionalities. However, let me just state here and clarify that Nigeria does not intend to negotiate or enter into a formal program with the IMF.
The shock response in emergency financing, but we recognize that in Tanzania, the specificity is that there has been less public investment directed on specifically on COVID. Our authorities, especially our Minister of Finance, to make sure that we have a good program on emergency financing with transparency of how money is being spent.
You heard there about Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa and Kenya. Unfortunately, those are not the only countries. There's also Cameroon, Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Madagascar and dozen other countries. So we're talking about lots of debt that affects a lot of different countries. So we have to ask ourselves, why is IMF all of a sudden so interested about Africa, and why do they want to give these loans in the middle of a pandemic? In order for us to understand that, we have to first understand what is a shock doctrine, because that's what IMF has always been using. That's what they are known for.
The rise of disaster capitalism described a brutal and recurring tactic by right-wing governments. After a shocking event, a war, coup, terrorist attack, market crash, or natural disaster, they exploit the public's disorientation, suspend democracy, push through radical free market policies that enrich the 1% at the expense of the poor and middle class.
Now in this video she's talking about in the context of America, but for us Africans it has always been IMF that has been using this method on us. For example, right now they have been giving these loans to African countries, and what they have been asking for is, firstly, many of the countries they have to raise their taxes. Secondly, for example, in the case of Kenya and South Africa, they're taking a look at government institutions and government-owned businesses. So everything that government owns, they want those countries to sell off. Now, thirdly, what they have been doing in the cases of Tanzania and all these other countries is that they have been giving these loans to these countries so that they could buy coronavirus vaccines. And who are benefiting from us buying these vaccines? Now, I'm not against the vaccines myself, but what I'm saying is that they are forcing us to buy these vaccines from American corporations. So in this sense, they're giving us money so that we could give that money to their friends. So it's not benefiting us in any way. It will not grow the African economy in any shape or form. This is just a way of funneling money to Western corporations. It's not benefiting us. And this is what they always do. When there's a disaster in Africa, whatever it may be, a famine, a war, or anything else, IMF and the World Bank, they always come in, they give you money, and then they tell you where to spend that money. And the way you spend that money will make sure that you will never benefit from it. Now, this is the case that happened in Jamaica. You will understand better how IMF works.
First of all, you go to the private banking system. and you say, well, can I get a private banking loan? Because I'm strapped for cash, I need some support, and I'm having trouble paying my overseas bills.
When the private banks won't lend to you, then you've got to do something if you're leader of a country. And typically what you've got to do is to cut back your spending in some way and try and get more money so that the impact of those cutbacks are not as severe as they otherwise would be. And it's at that point that you generally come to the IMF.
What you really need is to sit down with them and say, look, can I work out a 5-year program? And in the meantime, I'm strapped for some cash, so can you help me up front get out of the cash bind and then put it in the context of a long-term development plan? And they said, no, long-term development is your problem. We are here only to see who do you owe the money to, why are you in a bind, and we'll lend you some money in a very short time frame at full interest rate to get you out of the bind. And they then impose upon you tremendous restrictions in what you can spend.
And then we reach agreement on a set of measures on the budget, on the exchange rate, on monetary policy, on interest rates, on banks, on maybe privatization, and say, yep, we think this could solve your problem.
And you say to them, but if I do it that way, when I finish repaying you, I'm going to be in the bind all over, because this can't solve my problem. They say, not our problem.
Now that's what they have always been doing, and that's what they are currently doing. As you heard there, that man who worked for the IMF, he was saying that privatization, taxation, and all of these things that we are forcing you to do is part of the program. That's why the Nigerian finance minister was making sure to tell everybody that, you know what, we got a different kind of deal. We're not entering into any sort of program. We can do what we want with our money. But that's only to hook you in. They knew that Nigeria wouldn't accept the sort of money that they were offering, so they had to give Nigeria a different kind of deal. However, Kenya didn't get that deal. Tanzania didn't get that deal. Nobody else got that deal. And they were also telling African countries that they can't take loans from everywhere else. So they want to make sure that Africans cannot take loans from Chinese, because China doesn't do things like this. There are many things that I don't agree with the Chinese government, the way they handle their business, but when it comes to loans, they don't tell you what to do with it. So you can do what you want with that loan, and you can use it in a way that actually benefits your country. That's why ever since that African countries have been taking loans from the Chinese, they have been spending it on things that people actually need, like infrastructure. And that has been developing the economy. However, Tanzania taking billions of dollars in loan to buy vaccines from Western corporations that are selling them at a higher price is useless and worthless. If IMF actually cared about Africa, they would do what the African leaders have been begging them to do for a long time. African countries have been saying that let us produce our own vaccines, lift the patents. Then we wouldn't need these loans to buy these expensive vaccines. We could do them on our own. But that's not what they want. The idea of these loans is not to develop our economy. The idea of this loan is for them to take a control of our economy, for them to tell what we can do, for them to tell us what our tax rates should be, for them to tell us what we can buy and from who we can lend from and who not, what we can do and what not, what the government can do and what they can't do. They want to buy our infrastructure, everything the government owns. They want to sell those to Western corporations for pennies. This is not going to be beneficial to any of these countries. It is a short-term solution that won't help anyone. And I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please remember to subscribe, like, share and comment, because it helps me out. Thank you very much.